Hi guys, welcome to the Headphone Show. Today I'm going to give a quick impressions video of the FiR Audio M4 and M5 Universal IEMs. FiR Audio is a company that I didn't know all that much about until recently, but it turns out that I think their founder or CEO is someone who used to be one of the brains for 64 Audio. And of course I've reviewed a number of 64 Audio IEMs and they happen to be my current favorites. But these guys have come out with some IEMs that are also like flagship high-end IEMs. The M4 is I think $1,899 and the M5 is like $2,800. Now what's interesting to me with FiR Audio is that they're doing a similar thing to what 64 Audio did with their TIA driver for their balanced armature drivers. Basically there's no acoustic tube for the sound that's being produced. And it was really effective in the TIA drivers for 64 Audio, and it's clearly effective with these as well. And this is exciting to me because it's yet another demonstration of not all balanced armature drivers being equal. But actually on that note, it should be mentioned that these are both hybrid designs. So for the M4 here, that's this one, there's 3 balanced armatures and 1 dynamic driver to handle bass frequencies. And then with the M5, let's see if I can get this without tangling it. This uses 3 balanced armatures, 1 electrostatic for the highs, and then a dynamic driver for the bass frequencies as well. And so you do have hybrid systems going on here, but as far as the technical performance for both of them, it's exceptional. They're both excellent sounding for their detail retrieval. Their space and stage is pretty good as well. Not super crazy wide like the Legend X or the TIA Forte, but certainly not that in-your-head kind of thing. It definitely feels more spacious and open than many other IEMs that I've tried. And then importantly, because they're both using dynamic drivers for bass, you get a ton of really fun bass, slam, and impact. But in spite of the fact that they both have really good technical performance, they both have issues when it comes to tonality. Not significant issues, they're actually fairly minor, and one of these is going to get a recommendation from me. But let's talk about that. The bass response for the M4 is excellent. This is one of the best sounding IEMs that I've heard for bass. It's tight, well controlled, not overdone, so it's not, super elevated, but still with a little bit of extra energy there to be satisfying. And you get really good sub bass extension here as well. And then importantly, because of the dynamic driver going on, it's punchy. And actually the bass here reminds me of that of the 64 Audio U12T. But of course that one uses all balanced armature drivers. So that one doesn't have quite the same kind of punch and slam, even though it's surprisingly good for balanced armature. But this one I feel has better punch and slam. And then as you get in the mid-range, both of them are actually a little bit recessed there, a little bit dipped. But not extreme. It's not something where it would be too bothersome. But then once you get into the treble around like 5k hertz, well actually it elevates quite a bit earlier than that, which is actually a good thing. But at around 5k to 6k, there is too much energy on the M4. And it does actually get a little bit annoying. Now, it's not a peak, actually. It's not like it's this super sharp kind of sibilant thing, especially because at 5 to 6k, that's also not really where that comes across. It's more that it causes your certain percussive hits to sound a bit splashy and not quite right. And then it also can cause a little bit of shrillness there for female vocals. If I compare this to the U12T, which is only, I think, $100 more, very similar price, the U12T has better and more clear and more resolving treble response than the M4. But thankfully, you do also get lots of air. It's not particularly veiled. When you hear a cymbal crash, for example, it does crash all the way through, and hi-hats come through excellently. Apart from that one little issue, which I think it's not extreme, it's very subtle. You have to really be paying attention to be bothered by it, I think. For the most part, I really like the M4. Now, with the M5, it's a bit of a different story. I found that the bass for the M5 was the biggest problem. It's not that there's too much bass. I actually kind of like that there is a little bit more bass here. My problem is that the bass range is like way too high up into the mids. So it sounds a little bit muddy as a result. It's not quite as tight and well controlled as with the M4, and it's not as tight and well controlled as with the U12T or honestly even the TIA Trio. But the bass emphasis is pretty close to the TIA Trio, I'd say. So it's got a little bit more energy there, not too much, but then the shelf extends a bit further. You hear certain instruments sound a little bit muffled as a result. And so that I wasn't really into. But the flip side here is that it fixes the issues that I had with the treble. Yeah, again, maybe a little bit more energy there at 5 to 6k, but it's not over the edge. It's not too much. So for starters, it doesn't have percussion compression issues, so there's no peak there at 5k hertz. It doesn't have, it's not particularly sibilant, although it gets close, but I think it's on the right side again of sibilant. And then above, the consonant range, you get tons of air quality there. It sounds wonderfully resolving, and it doesn't sound like it's rolled off or anything. And so really, with the M4 and the M5, I kind of want a hybrid of the two. I kind of want something that's got the bass response of the M4, tight, well controlled, but still punchy and fun. And then I kind of want the treble response of the M5, which is a little bit less fatiguing at around 5k hertz, 6k hertz, but still incredibly resolving, and you still get enough energy there for it to be interesting. If I had to pick one or the other, I think I would actually probably pick the M5, but only because I'm just more bothered by the treble issues that I find with the M4. But with that said, the M4 is the one that I recommend, without question. The M4 at $1,900, or I think that's what this is. This is right up there with the competition. So I'll give you a bit of a comparison here. I would take the M4 over the Empire Ears Valkyrie. I might take it over the Solaris because the bass response here is, I like the bass response better here than I do on the Solaris. The Solaris, I like the treble a bit better, and it's a bit more of sort of a fun kind of sound. So that would be a tough one. I think it depends on what you would want. I still would take the U12T over the M4. I still think, in spite of the fact that I think I prefer the bass presence of the M4 better than the U12T from 64 Audio, everything else for the U12T is better in my opinion. Just the overall treble balance is better, and the mid-range balance is better. So, for me, I take the U12T, but for all those other IEMs that come in at a similar price, these sort of flagship, between $1,500 and $2,000, which is, again, a ridiculous amount of money to spend on IEMs, but I think that the M4 is appropriately priced for how well it does, for how well it performs. It's pretty darn good. With the M5, however, I can't recommend this at $2,800 or however much it costs, because the U12T exists, the TIA Trio exists, and importantly, the M4 exists. The M5 would be excellent, and I would have it right up there, if not for the bass emphasis that's just a little bit too high up. Some people might be okay with that. Some people might enjoy that. So I don't want to rain on your parade if you're into that kind of sound. And I actually do think that there are going to be people who like this. If I could compare this to an over-ear headphone, it reminds me of the tonality a little bit of the Meze Empyrean, where it has pretty good tonal balance for the most part, but for the bass, it's just a little bit soupy in there. And if I had to compare the M4 to an over-ear headphone, yeah, this would be closer to something like Hi-Fi Man Aria. There's a little bit of extra 5 to 6k hertz energy there. It causes certain things to be a little bit shrill at times, right? So there's absolutely going to be tracks that you listen to with the M4 where you're like, oh, this is great. There's no issues whatsoever. But then there are also going to be other tracks where it's like, whoa, that is just too much. Other interesting things to note, yeah, the cables for these are very good. They're a little bit on the heavy side, but I like these a lot. They don't really tangle all that much. They're very, very, they're not stiff. And also, you gotta love the look. I love the way that these look. I think these look even better than the 64 Audio ones, to be honest. And if you do get this IEM, I recommend using the foam tips on here because it may help with that 5 to 6k energy that's up there. That's just a little bit much. And again, it's just a little bit much. Like, I don't want to make this seem like this is like a peak or anything like that. And this does not sound like a Bayer dynamic. It's just a little bit high here. And I want them to come out with like an in-between model, right? Price it around $2,200 and take the good things about this and the good things about this, put that together, and then I would have, the flagship that I've been looking for. But yeah, that does it for this video. Thanks for taking the time to watch it. If you guys like what I do, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one.